Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Prose Notes, a graduate writing podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Busting out the NPR voice early.
I started so strong, and I had to come down as a professional
woman.
Semi-academic.
Yes.
Well, we are so excited to be back in the sound booth today. I've got both Nolan and Eden with me. Hello to you both.
Hello.
It's weird to all be here at once, but
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's good.
Yeah.
The vibes are good
Been
already.
a long time in the works, and it finally works out for all of us.
Yeah.
We're excited and got the goofy energy going.
Well, we all have to be here because this is our Imposter Syndrome episode. We're going to get real serious and probably vulnerable to an extent about kind of our experiences with feeling like we don't belong, which I think is an important topic for all of us to discuss, since we're all in very different stages of our careers and trajectories.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one of those topics that like everybody has to experience at some point in their life as an academic or even like out there in the world. I feel like it's really prevalent, and I've definitely. I mean, should I be here right now?
Yes, absolutely. You belong at the table.
I love that. Anyways, so yeah, no, it's a good one to have all three of us because I'm sure we've all had varying degrees and panic moments of the imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head.
Yeah, no, I think the challenge is going to be like cutting this for
Short.
time and like actually keeping it to a reasonable
Yeah.
We're gonna
conversation about this.
2-hour episode marathon. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, we have a structure. We have a vague little script that we're going to follow for today. And in that note, I do want to kind of do some quick housekeeping up front. So this is going to be our first episode of the spring 2025 semester. So we're pretty excited to record a few other episodes this term. We're not going to be super ambitious. I think we've got like 3 or 4 planned.
Something like that.
Yeah. But that is our goal for this term. And then we'll continue to brainstorm and think about what other topics will be relevant to the KU graduate student population. I also want to say up front that this is being recorded before our HLC site visit. So the Higher Learning Commission is coming to KU to do its re-accreditation visit. And if we can get this episode out before then, I really, really encourage all of our listeners to participate in any events that are planned for that HLC re-accreditation visit. It's going to be really important for the KU community to kind of come together to show that we, care about this institution and what it means to be kind of an institution of higher learning. So please, please, please think about what you have to say, even if it's not necessarily positive. Any sort of insights into your own KU experience is going to be really, really helpful for us to get our reaccreditation.
And I do think that there's a survey that is out for
Yes.
students to take. So if you haven't taken that, take it. I actually did take it.
Hell yeah.
I'm one of those people who sometimes when a survey just like floats across my email screen, I'm like, and then I take the survey.
Yeah.
By all means, be like Eden and say, oh, sure, I'll take it.
I live for Qualtrics.
I know. I love a survey. I love telling people what I think in
That's why we have a podcast.
Exactly.
In an anonymized way, not in a public setting. Well, wonderful. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome today. Before we get into that, let's get some of this goofy energy out.
A gaff.
A goof, a gaff, a trick, a
guffaw.
craft. I have a question for you two.
Fire away.
We're all gamers.
Yeah.
We're all
well,
GG gamers.
yeah,
Big
sure.
gamers.
If you were to implement a video game mechanic into your writing, your reading, your work process, what video game mechanic would it be, and how would it make your life easier?
Well, I was brainstorming this just before we started recording, and I've been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom.
Hell yeah.
Which means that I would love to be able to teleport, via the Purapad.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, who's got time to walk up this hill anymore? But like, it would work the way, you gotta like unlock the building. So like you stand outside of Murphy and you like touch it nicely and
Oh.
it goes doo-doo-doo. And then you can teleport there and the little thing lights up. I would definitely do that for research purposes to save some time. Because
Nice.
I feel like I spend half of my time being like, oh, I gotta go to campus.
Yeah. All right, Hermione.
But yeah, that's what I would choose. I feel like the teleportation would make my life a lot easier. And then you don't spend money on gas. So,
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Yeah.
added bonus.
Added bonus.
How about you, Nolan?
This is a tough one. So last night it was like, I'll say 1 a.m. I'll let everyone know how late I stay up. I was looking at my Steam library just because I got a lot of games there. And so there's this game. It's by Square Enix. If you don't know, they make Japanese role-playing games. They're always got a weird title and a weird, crazy storyline. This one's called Romancing Saga 2. And so in this game, you play as the emperor of, I forget the country's name, but like eventually the emperor's rule ends and there's a new one that comes along. And so you inherit all your skills onto the new one. And I just like that idea of like, eventually I'll cease to exist. And I wish I could inherit my skills to the next version of me. And like build. And so by the end of the game, you've built up like tons of skills to face like the last boss or whatever. And so I would love to like be able to somehow like transfer my skills on to the next version and make it like a longer project and cycle. And there's also like quick travel and stuff like that. That was one I did not think about and makes a lot of sense.
Isn't that just the scholarly conversation? Like, aren't you just?
But I want to reincarnate myself.
Yeah, he wants to come back with all of his knowledge.
Okay.
I don't have enough
next
time. That or just like Skyrim skill leveling. Like if I could just write a one word over and over again to improve my writing skill
Research
tree.
level
Like
20.
it's just really just grinding
Yeah.
a little sound. Just, zhung.
I
feel
love
that.
that.
about
Similar to you both. I think there'd be kind of a quality of life mechanic and then like an actual like useful mechanic for my work. But quality of life mechanic would be like not a dating sim, but like I would want relationship meters with everybody I know. So
See
I
how
kind
high
of
the heart
I
is.
kind of know where I stand, and if I need to like
Way
level.
all the way failed for me.
Aw, thank you.
We're recording on Valentine's Day.
It
Oh
is.
yeah,
Happy
happy
Valentine's
Love
Day.
you guys.
Love you too.
Love you guys.
My friendship meter is full.
Oh, there are just hearts
Yeah,
in this
just
space,
exploding off of my head.
Imagine hearts. But yeah, like a relationship meter with everyone. So if so I can kind of see and also invest in people if I'm like, ooh, that should be higher.
Like, ooh,
Yeah.
Nolan is looking a little unhappy with me.
I think the other thing that would be cool, and this is technically not like a specific game mechanic, but the idea of just sort of a generalized award system. So any random thing that I do that's like the first
I want
time
a
I've
platinum
done,
research.
yeah, platinum
yeah.
research, or when you just get those awards on like the either Steam games or PlayStation games where it's like, you did this.
You
And
get a
I'm like,
gamer score, you get a
Master
research score.
Angler from
amazing.
Stardew.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, that's great. I've
So is there
done
like a
something.
wiki you could use to look up like how to get particular
yeah.
achievements?
Yeah, it would be, I guess, demystifying life in that way of like, oh, there are things that I can do to improve my
That'd be funny.
Yeah.
and make progress.
It would be cool if, like, after you turn in a paper, rather than like getting a grade, like, oh, it's a B. Let's just like make it like that's an S rank paper.
Yes,
Mhm.
S rank paper.
When you submit to a journal, they're like S rank, top tier.
You get tier
Chef's kiss.
listed.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm sure that'll be reserved for only like the oldest of scholars, and then
It's-
you're like, oh man,
It's
I
got,
keep getting E rank papers.
It's got the like Sonic Adventure
Yeah.
2 music.
Mhm.
Do, 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 do,
Oh yeah,
do.
and they're like, ah, too bad,
Oh. And you're like,
rats.
well, I guess do I belong in academia if I'm not getting S rank papers?
Precisely, and the answer may surprise you.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Well, and I think that's really where we're going today is
Mhm.
that question of belonging. So imposter syndrome is something that affects, I think, every graduate student. I don't want to be too bold in that claim.
Yeah.
Maybe almost every graduate
I
student.
can't think of anyone who I've ever talked to who's been like, I'm the most confident, belonging person here.
Mhm.
Like, I haven't come across it, and I know a lot of people, so.
Yeah. I know a lot of very confident men where I do imagine that that's kind of a performance that even, under the surface, there's a little bit of that fear and that imposter feeling. But, I do think that this is an extremely widespread phenomenon. I know I experience it. I know you both do to some extent. So where I would like to start today is kind of a definitional understanding of what imposter syndrome is, because it is a relatively new concept that's definitely been kind of approaching higher ed more frequently and seems to be either a symptom or kind of an underlying cause of, I think, a lot of frustration with, educational programs specifically. So I pulled a definition of imposter syndrome, and this is from the NIH government page. So this is a official.
This is from the top.
Yeah, this is from the top.
This is what the government thinks it is.
What the government thinks imposter syndrome is a behavioral health phenomenon described as self-doubt of intellect, skill, or accomplishments among high-achieving individuals. And I want to emphasize high-achieving individuals because that's what we all are. These individuals cannot internalize their success and subsequently experience pervasive feelings of self-doubt, anxiety, depression, and or apprehension of being exposed as a fraud in their work, despite verifiable and objective evidence of their successfulness. The term imposter syndrome and imposter phenomenon are used interchangeably, with imposter phenomenon gaining more frequent use in recent literature. And this was first coined in 1978 by Suzanne Imes, PhD, and Pauline Rose Clance, PhD, as an observation first among successful women and other marginalized groups. So it does come from a kind of place of intersectionality. How are these marginalized groups being treated, or how are they feeling in these high-achieving, probably predominantly white settings? And now I think it is something that we're seeing with across the board with kind of all populations.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And that's interesting. Only 1978.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This had to be going on
I mean,
for all of history.
Honestly, probably Aristotle was like
Some advisor to the king, right? Is like, do I belong?
Yeah.
Oh, am I fit to be the king's jester? Who knows? He could be the best jester in all the land, high achieving, and maybe
But they all laugh at him.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's the goal.
Yeah, but sometimes they're laughing at him and not with him.
Who's the sad clown? Pagliacci. Pagliacci. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's crazy though. It's 1978. That's when the term was actually coined. And by women. Love it.
Yeah. Love that we're suffering.
But I think you're probably right. It's probably been going on forever, but it's definitely something that I feel is more equally divided across campus nowadays.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, almost every grad student who I've ever interacted with during my 2 different graduate degrees have all been like, yeah, I don't know if I'm good enough to be here. And it's that deep-seated little anxiety that you sort of quietly harbor until you kind of start talking to a few other people about it, and everyone then gets to make each other feel a little bit better, which hopefully we can do today. But yeah, no, definitely interesting to hear. It's only kind of a recent phenomenon that people have begun to kind of talk about it, because, that jester. He's been worried for a long time.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'd like to meet the person who says they don't feel this. Because I'd be like,
who are they?
How? Who? What? Why?
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe we'll talk about later a bit.
confidence.
Maybe there's some, I don't know if useful is the word, but
Yeah.
we're going to try and look at all angles, I
All
think, of what's
angles.
going on here.
I was thinking as you were talking, Eden, about the idea that this is more widespread, and I was like, I wonder why. And I think to an extent it has to do with kind of the socioeconomic context of higher ed. So higher ed is far more accessible for all kind of walks of life nowadays. Not totally, but more so than probably in the 1970s.
Mhm.
And higher ed has always been, I think, a place of legacy,
Mhm.
and kind of that system of hierarchy that we are still seeing the remnants of, especially in like the advisor advisee model,
Mhm.
especially in the way that a lot of like research gets organized at the kind of higher academic levels. So, one, we're seeing like more poor people participating in research endeavors and participating in research endeavors that still have that like twinge of, do you have the funds to basically
Right.
complete this research?
Yeah.
So, I do wonder how much of our experiences, especially as being people who feel that imposter syndrome, are like, well, do I belong here? Because I don't know anyone else in my family who got a higher ed degree. I think I have like an extended cousin who's a professor somewhere, but I've never met them. And everyone else in my family is just like kind of educated.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think one thing too is, and it's the thing everyone talks about, like for all problems, is like the internet or just like the
Oh, yeah.
increased visibility, right? Where you've got people who
Mhm.
have like Instagram accounts about
Yeah.
being grad students or
Mhm.
whatever. And so there's just like increased visibility, right? Like we see others, like the
Mhm.
rest of us more. And then it becomes really easy to compare and say, hey, I'm not there, or I don't have that, or I don't have an Instagram account with like 1,200,
Yeah.
whatever people on the account. And then it becomes really easy to say, why aren't I there? Or
Mhm.
to think it's hard to get to that stage.
Yeah. There are so many there are so many spaces to be visible nowadays that if you're not visible in your main space, are you really even there? It's
Mhm.
Yeah.
that kind of narrative. But, to this point, imposter syndrome, very common among high achieving graduate students. And I think everybody at grad school is high achieving
Mhm.
at some level. But one of the things that was interesting about the NIH description of imposter syndrome is it did offer some symptoms of how this manifests in people. And so their list was, and I want to emphasize this to our listeners, it's going to sound sobering because you probably will identify one of these in yourself and your own work habits. So, response to imposter syndrome, or a symptom of it, is over preparation or procrastination, perfectionism, which we've talked about a lot, superheroism, which is the idea of you need to be the best at something, fear of failure or atyctophobia, denial of competence and capability, and then achievemophobia or fear of success. So, all ends of the spectrum here. We have the fear of failure, of don't want to I don't want to fail at this and I want to do well. We have the fear of success, of if I succeed, people will see me for what I truly am. We have perfectionism, where students are really spending too much time trying to work on something that is in no way ever going to be perfect. So, their efforts are kind of flawed in that regard. We have procrastination, of if I don't do this, I'm setting myself up for a different kind of failure that will be more easily accessible or understandable to kind of an outside audience. So I thought it was really, really fascinating that these are all things I see in graduate students, even if I hadn't identified them in terms of imposter syndrome. Like, these are all practices that we work on with our students in consultations or coaching appointments. And so it was sobering to be like, oh, the underlying
thing going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that list of symptoms, it's like I've experienced almost every single one of those.
Yeah.
You're like, ooh, whoops.
Mhm.
I'm in this list and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm in this picture. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I'm curious, and to be, if you're willing to share, which ones seem to resonate the most with you?
Ugh, gosh. So it's kind of shifted a little bit. So when I went on for my master's, for those that don't know, because probably most people who are listening don't know, I have 2 degrees in flute performance, and then I made a switch to a research-based degree,
Mhm.
which is very scary.
Oh, yeah.
As a performer, you're practicing however many hours a day and going to rehearsals, and that's a whole different list of like imposter syndrome
Yeah.
symptoms that end up happening there, or the same list just manifesting differently. But when I made the switch, it was a lot of that fear of, can I actually like do any of this? I had
Mm.
real fear of like not being capable of not having any success. And now I would say that it's like, I feel mostly like I can do most things now.
Mhm.
I feel like some of KU's practices in the music department with my musicology professors, they did help me get over the initial kind of like, am I qualified to write a paper
Mm.
in music history?
Mhm.
That big, like, I don't know. But now I'm afraid that, like, I suppose the fear of like not succeeding is still there, especially with things like funding applications.
Yeah.
And I'm
Mhm.
at the end of my PhD. I've been dissertating for a minute, hoping to be finished next year. Dear God, am I going to get a job?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Right.
those kinds of things are the ones that probably resonate the most with me. And then I also am a bad procrastinator.
Oh
I
yeah.
am a very bad little procrastinator who can never stop. And that's been really hard to deal with as someone trying to write a document that's going to take forever.
Yeah.
Um, so those are probably the ones that resonate the most with me. It's still that fear of like not being able to succeed in a field that I've chosen,
Mhm.
even though I'm probably totally capable. But some days it
Yeah.
does not feel that way.
Mhm.
And then the procrastination is probably the other biggest one for me. But I don't know. What about you, Nolan?
Yeah, there's lots of things. I think the things I'll talk about at this time, right, is like, so kind of like you, I changed content areas.
Oh,
I've talked
wow.
about that on the pod, from like language education now to just higher education overall. And so for the first couple of years, because this is my last term of coursework, like it was like, do I have the right kind of knowledge? Like I
Mhm.
have a lot of content knowledge I have to catch up on, but like are my critical reasoning skills or whatever like up to snuff? Or, is the knowledge that I'm, kind of offering to the department or to the field going to be seen as valuable? Because it does come from a different kind of orientation. So that was a lot of it for the first couple of years. And a thing that I think I've worked through pretty good now, like I'm pretty comfortable with like who I am as a scholar and what I bring to the table. The procrastination is just a big one. We'll talk about it. I have ADHD. That plays such a big part, I
Mm.
think, in these kinds of things. One thing though that I hadn't really like verbalized, I guess, until right now is like, it's like this anticipatory thing where if you hit a thing out of the park, like, can I reproduce that
Yeah.
success?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, like that's it. Cause like you see all these like rock star authors at the conferences or whatever, and you're like, wow, like they, I hope I can emulate a trajectory like theirs. And
Mhm.
I think I can, but like what happens if I do have like one cool article and then nothing else comes of it? Like, is that success? And that's a thing that used to keep me up at night. That's again a thing I've come to more peace with. But like I think that's a very real thing of like, oh, like if I do it once, people are gonna expect that of
Yep.
me. And how do I
Mhm.
like maintain that, especially at an R1 institution where you're trying to publish 2-3 articles a year at least?
Yeah. I feel like the fear of success is honestly the thing that I think freaks me out the most. I mean this like in a very humble way. I got very freaked out during grad school when people were like, "Oh, this is so good." Cuz
Mm.
I was scared that, "Oh no, if this is good, I don't know how I did that."
How do I do it?
Oh,
and
God.
how do I do that again? And
Mhm.
there were these moments where, because I felt like I was constantly floundering, that when I would receive praise, I would not know what to do with that
Mm.
because it freaked me out. I wasn't sure how to recreate that success, and it put me on this pedestal that I was like, especially to a lot of my friends, I was like, no, 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 I'm the same as you. Like we are struggling with the same things. I just want to be normal. Like it was
I'm
that
regular
weird,
Samantha.
a regular Rudy. And it was this like weird. There were moments where I like almost just practiced being bad at something or just like practiced failing. And then I would have the other concern of my advisor would be like, this is not your best work. What are
Mhm.
you doing here? And, it would go back and forth between this push and pull of, well, do I try to exceed expectations, or do I start like kind of mitigating some of those expectations so I don't have to be the best every single time I do something.
Right, and like it's just a weird space, and like because you would want the pals you have in the cohort, right, to have those achievements and have that success, and so it's like this weird cognitive like dissonance to like wish that for other people, but like when you experience it yourself, it's hard.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't deserve. No,
Yeah.
other people are deserving. I am not deserving.
Yeah, like I'm just a regular guy.
Yeah. I had a conversation with like a friend the other day. I was in my book club. It's a group of, I want to say, very, very intelligent women. But this conversation always comes up where there are a couple of them that don't really have higher ed degrees, and so they feel a little bit like unintelligent in the group, and we always want to reassure them that no, like you're smart, wonderful people who like really do think critically about the books in the world and whatever. But there was another woman in the group who has a PhD in nursing. She's like she's got a doctorate in nursing, and she looked at me and was like, "Oh, I was so worried that you thought I was dumb." And I was like, in what universe?
You're like, ma'am, you are a professional doctor nurse.
Yeah.
Like I can like hurt my arm and you can make it better.
I'm like a fake doctor.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not going to be a useful doctor myself, you know.
But even that language of, why am I now putting myself down to kind of build somebody back up? But also, why are they putting themselves down in the first place? So it was a very surreal moment.
And it's like a weird thing, and like you get it, and like it is a lot of things. Like it's a mix. Like it's hard to get into these programs, but like when I talk to people who like express those ideas, I'm like, I think lots of people could do this. Like doing graduate school is kind of the choice to like work through it and get through it all. Like I don't think there's anything I would say innate in any of us that makes us like grad students or whatever. It's just an extra certificate, and you put in the work and the time or whatever. And I think lots of people are capable of it. Lots of people choose not to.
Yeah.
But then it's a weird mix of like, yes, it is like a thing that you go through and does offer like extra expertise and training and whatnot. But like, I think pretty much anyone could do a PhD if they wanted to. You just have to put in the time, the work, the effort, all those kinds of things.
Yeah. I do think that it takes a kind of perseverance that, and I think everybody is capable of, but it is not for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's like this like thing in the mind of like, oh, they went to grad school, like they're an expert of something. And I am, but that's because I chose this path. You didn't. That's not like a problem.
Yeah. I chose to be an expert in this. You can choose to be an expert in almost anything you want.
Well, and some people are experts in things and they didn't go to any kind of additional schooling. My own dad, he doesn't have a college degree, and at the same time, he is like, I think I don't actually know his job title, and this is terrible. But he's like in upper management of like data systems and like that kind of stuff. He taught himself. The man made a Blu-ray player one time.
Wait, from his own two hands?
From his own two hands.
Incredible.
He hewn it. But like it just goes to show that like as much as we're all grad school people, we're all people who are like the higher learning, other people can have expertise too. And so like, if you ever have like a friend who doesn't have an advanced degree, they are probably an expert in something as well. They just have different hands-on experience, and that's something that maybe, if you have that situation again, like, with one of the other ladies who is like, doesn't have a higher ed degree, you're like, dude, you have other amazing skills and all that kind of good stuff. So
we're all very
I'm
like
glad
touchy-feely. Like we
good vibes at the book club.
Good vibes at the book club.
The vibes are good.
But it is something where it is a vulnerable conversation to have with somebody, because if they're revealing to you that they don't feel like they're up to snuff or in some way, shape, or form, you almost kind of have to say, me too, and then also share your own vulnerability, which not everyone is comfortable doing. So that's maybe where some of this, like, almost imposter syndrome comes in, because I can be very honest with you two and say, hey, I don't feel like I'm good at this particular work, or I don't feel like I'm meeting everybody's expectations. And you could say, that's great. or that sucks. I don't know what to do. You know, like you could respond in a way that makes me feel like, oh, this is a valid experience, and I am shitty as a person.
Well, yeah, and so like
terrible.
like I think the thing I was trying to head is like there's like ritual to higher ed, and that
Yes,
creates
yeah.
this like buildup. But like part of ritual is like you learn the steps, you learn the patterns, and it means like everyone else also has to like learn this ritual. So like other people are in the same boat as you are, and I guess not everyone's pretending, but we're all kind of pretending a little bit, and the boat moves along. Like it just continues on down the river.
Have either of you ever had a conversation with your advisors or faculty members about this type of vulnerability?
I'm going to say this. I have a small, healthy fear of my advisor. And so he's great, but he's like one of those, like, he's a successful scholar and he is, doing all sorts of cool stuff all the time. I don't feel like I should bring that up because I have to just in my head I'm like, fake it till you make it. He said, "You're the last one I'm ever gonna advise. We'd better make this count."
Oh,
Wow. So but he's retired, but he's technically emeritus status or whatever. So no, I haven't brought it up with him. I'm trying to think if I ever did in like previous, like in my master's. I think I was also a little afraid of my master's teacher. So I'm seeing a pattern. So for me, I don't think I have, and I don't think I've really brought it up with any of the professors here, especially because they kind of took a chance on me in that I was like provisionally admitted.
Oh, interesting.
I had to take 12 extra credits
Oh.
of coursework to prove that I could do the writing,
Like do the work.
do the work.
Well, that cured your imposter syndrome, right?
For the most part. I mean, I got good grades. What are you gonna do? But I definitely think that some of that had a bit of an impact on how I viewed myself walking into the program, and how then I interacted with the professors afterwards. Like it very much like there's a front. And it doesn't really drop super easily. There was one professor who's awesome, and I love him. Dr. Roust. He's amazing. He makes everybody feel like at home. And like I think maybe I've had like one conversation with him kind of about things like that. But for the most part, I've put up a pretty strong like, no, I belong here. Front, you just put on the mask.
Manifesting.
And you like do power poses. But for me, it's especially my advisor. I don't think I would ever have a conversation like this with him. But I mean, who knows? He'll be on the podcast, by the way. I forgot to tell you guys.
Wonderful.
Foreshadowing.
Just
yeah.
tell him to not listen to this episode.
Yeah, exactly. But that's totally fine. But how about you, Nolan?
I also think I haven't, but for not the same reason. So Lena, wonderful advisor. And it's a word that you use, like, I feel comfortable with Lena. So, like, any pretense or, like, imposter syndrome that I have kind of does fly out the door when I, like, step into her office. Because I'm like, oh, we're just people whose lives have, like, we're at KU now. Like, that's what we do. So, like, it's really comfortable and easy. And so she's done a great job of, like, here are steps, like, concrete steps you take in terms of the course plan, or here's what your time after your course plan looks in terms of, like, comps, proposal, because that's the stage I'm in now, or I'm heading towards. And so, like, there has been thoughts personally of like, oh yeah, like, am I ready for comps and all these things? And she's like, you've done the coursework, like, you will be. So we haven't had the conversation, but only because, like, I think she does a good job of combating that kind of already in the interactions that we have.
That's so nice.
Lena, you're the best. What about you, Samantha?
I'm trying to think. So similar to Eden, I feel like I was kind of a healthy intimidation of my advisor and my committee. I also, I think, wanted to put up a front of competency, which broke sometimes. So I remember having a couple of conversations with my advisor where she was like, oh, you don't need feedback right now. You need emotional support. And it was like she had to kind of shift gears in that conversation to kind of help me work through whatever it was in that moment. But I do think that they were all supportive, but I remember feeling like their responses to my identity crisis was, oh, well, you just need to read more, or, oh, you just need to start writing down your thoughts every single, like, their advice to my feelings was practical in a way that I didn't need it to be practical in that moment. Like, I actually needed something a little bit more, I don't know, emotional or kind of empathetic. And I think that's where the imposter syndrome got worse, because if your response to me saying I don't feel like I belong here is just do more work, of course I'm just going to do more work, but that's not going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
No, it's just going to make me more stressed.
Yeah.
Treat the symptom, not the cause kind of thing.
exactly.
No. And what an academic response
Yeah.
to a student
mean-
being like, hello, yes, I am struggling.
Yeah.
You should journal.
Have you tried writing a paper?
Have you tried reading
Have
more?
you tried thinking about
Have you
what
tried
you're doing?
spiraling harder?
I mean, that's kind of what academia is, if we're really being honest. But I do think that there have been other people, other mentors in my life who have done very differently. So my most recent supervisor at the Wingspan, Dr. Casey Reed, who just left for a different position. I mean, she would meet me where I was at. So granted, I'm in a very different place in my life and having different feelings of imposter syndrome, but I think what's helpful is for me to build networks of people who can treat me like a professional, but also treat me like a human. And that was, I feel like, a very valuable experience to say, oh, this person knows how to navigate this like professional space, but also knows how to give me the emotional support that I need in that moment.
That's so nice.
I know.
Casey.
Casey, I'll
Bye,
miss
Casey.
you.
Peace out, Casey.
We'll miss you so much. We love you so much. But yeah, it's really interesting how like each of us have kind of grappled with this imposter syndrome in different ways. Eden, you mentioned this earlier that it's kind of changed. What would you say is like the narrative of your imposter syndrome?
Oh God.
And Nolan, I'll ask you the same question.
So I mean, it started early when I was a child.
When
But in all seriousness, being a musician, you get the imposter syndrome early on. You catch that in like some people like high school, and I went to a very competitive high school for music stuff, and I wasn't the best. I didn't win the competitions and that kind of thing, and that kind of stuff messed me up for a while. And then in college, it turned into, I'm practicing and I don't feel like I'm ever getting any better. And should I get a music degree? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who handed me a flute?
Says
what
the
idiot
flautist.
did this? It was me. I handed myself a flute. It's fine. I am the core of my problems. But so it, in the way that it manifested as a performer, it was always that was out of tune. I was late. I was early. I chipped that note. You didn't even play that high C. What are you doing?
Oh.
It was always self-comparison and then comparison out into the world. We have all these wonderful recordings of these amazing artists and that kind of thing. I was listening to that every day, trying to model that every day and feeling like garbage when I couldn't do it. And that's part of the reason why I was like, I don't think performance is really for me. The way that I had to practice all that kind of good stuff, it was a part of the like internal discussion on changing my career path because it's hard. I applaud everyone who ends up being a successful musician because it's way more work than people think.
Yeah.
So when I decided to make the pivot, the imposter syndrome shifted a little bit to be like, well, so they've made you take all these classes because they aren't sure that you can write, even though your entire life, everyone has always told you you're a good writer. And so I had this like paradigm shift in my brain where it was like, these people think I'm an idiot.
Oh no.
But they still accepted me.
Okay.
And I mean, KU's also, I'll say this, KU's the only graduate program that accepted me. At the PhD level, I had a couple people who were like, you want to do a master's? And I was like, I just did a master's. So the paradigm shift in my brain, I had like kind of a crisis of, a little identity crisis of like, well, I I thought I was good at this thing, and now I'm being given like B's, and I'm really not sure what that's all about because I felt like I wrote a cohesive argument, all that kind of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I, panicked through probably the first year, and I remember accosting my now very good friend after class, being like, "You're a PhD student in musicology, right?" And she was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Let's have coffee." And
Oh.
like I like we went to JNS, which is a local place in town on the west side of town if you haven't been. And but I remember having this interaction with her where we were both like posturing
Yeah.
the whole
Oh,
time because
interesting.
she had a master's in musicology and I had a master's in flute performance, and I had to like puff myself up a little bit to be like, "Yes, I do belong here." Meh.
Yeah.
And now we're like super good friends. We got over that pretty quickly, but I watched how it colored my interactions with
Mm.
my cohort. I was deeply mistrustful of the other
Oh.
people in my
Mm-hmm.
cohort because I didn't want them to know that I low key sucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least that was like
How you felt? Yeah.
what I was feeling at the time. And, after about a year, getting better grades on papers as, semesters went on and having conversations with my advisor about like where I was heading for a direction for the dissertation and all that kind of stuff, I was like, well, I'm holding my own in these conversations for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, like he's one of those people who you never feel like you're completely caught up with, but eventually getting the validation of like, well, these are decent grades. I'm getting good feedback from like once I got a GTA, working with the different professors, getting
Mhm.
good feedback about like, oh yeah, you did that really well with your students, or
Nice.
I watched your lesson and I thought this, and this were good. This is something I feel like, maybe you could do a little less of, but it's fine. Like it's not detracting from your lesson. Getting the actual constructive like criticism and feedback in a nice way was incredibly validating. So it helped to mitigate some of that imposter syndrome stuff. Now I'm facing the issue of I got rejected for a whole bunch of conferences. I got
Oh,
rejected
no.
for 3 that I applied to, and I felt like I had a paper that I was going to write about video game music. I
Hmm.
thought that my abstract was quite good.
Mhm.
They apparently did not.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
And those kinds of applications are now where I'm feeling the imposter syndrome sink in a little bit more.
Okay.
Fellowship applications, scholarship applications, those kinds of things. Oh, they're so insidious.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of sitting now with feeling like an imposter. Like I know I can write the papers.
Mhm.
That's fine. I know how to do research now. Now it's, does anyone outside of KU think that I'm good enough to do
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
And so it's more outward job facing now,
Yeah.
or at least facing the future, I think. But I've applied for a whole bunch of things, and I don't know if I've gotten them or not. But when I was applying, I honestly had the thought to myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
This is a waste of time because no one's going to say, yeah, let's fund this girl talking about female flutists in the 20th century because that's super cool research. Like, I'm having those thoughts
Oh.
Mm.
Yeah.
about my place in the research and what
Mhm.
kind of research I'm doing. And I'm like, ugh, all those science people are going to get it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it turns into those kinds of thoughts. So
Yeah.
for me, it's been kind of a weird, like, I've always sat with imposter syndrome. It's been a terrible friend, but it comes with me to every degree, and now I'm hoping that it will maybe shut up a little bit. But until I feel like until I get some of that external validation of like, oh, you got accepted into a journal, or
Mhm.
you get into more conferences than not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how I will ever like mitigate some of that because I think some of the external validation is really important
Yeah.
to me. And it's the marker of success.
Yeah.
It's when you are applying for jobs, if you don't have like a list of, this, that, the other thing, publish or die, all that good stuff, you feel like you're not going to get a job.
Yeah.
But somewhere will eventually take a chance on people. And I
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that KU took a chance on
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
I have to look at it in a different frame of light, but it's really hard.
Yeah,
So
it is.
that's a long answer to your
No, that was
question,
beautiful.
but that's how I feel. So
I mean, it's, but I think it is valuable to think. And Nolan, I can't wait to hear what your story is. But the stories change. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't.
It's not one thing.
It's
Mhm.
not one form of imposter syndrome. It's not one manifestation of it. Like it changes with where you are, the people
Mhm.
around you, how you feel like you're being treated in that space. So, I think this is fascinating.
Yeah, as I think about my the thing even about even if you get into the conference, the thing
Mhm.
that makes you feel good and welcome, it can also be a place because you hear about the packages people got to pay for their research or whatever, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I didn't get that
Oh,
opportunity.
people get money to.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
going to AERA, the biggest educational research conference, I'm good. It would have been a harder thing had I not been at a place where I was okay with where I was in my program, because you hear all these wonderful things and you're like, those aren't the opportunities I've had.
Mhm.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And then I actually was talking to myself of it's good for them. It's not a knock against you, any of those kinds of things. Actually, talking myself through it. As it's manifested in my life, though, it really has related pretty strongly to just my mental health. So, in addition to ADHD, I've got anxiety, which creates a fun whirlpool in my mind that kind of
Yay.
operates. I think of it on kind of two vectors. So, it's this weird thing, and the definition you read earlier talks about it. It's this really weird thing. I guess I'm a man, but and I've always felt this, but I felt confident in my intelligence my whole life.
Mhm.
And so it's a weird thing to feel internal confidence in who I am, but still not trusting perception. I've always how my anxiety manifests is needing an external source to
Yeah.
let me know that what I am perceiving is the case. And that sure happens with all the work that we do here, because you do get accepted for the publication or the conference or the whatever. There are very real things that check that. But in addition to that, ADHD makes it hard because, what do? We specialize in an area of content. And I
Mhm.
want to research everything and
Yeah.
everything and everything's interesting. And it's tough to, really specialize and head down that rabbit hole. And so I feel stuck at times trying to, pick my lane, or even committing to a lane can be
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And you see other people, really passionate about this niche topic. And, I'm passionate about lots of things, but I wonder, am I as passionate about one thing as other people in my cohort are passionate about one thing, whereas maybe I'm more passionate about lots of things. And
Yeah.
so tough to concentrate the energy. And then just that weird thing of I trust my knowledge, but is it real?
Yeah.
Is the question I ask myself a lot.
I love the idea of the Renaissance man, and this was something I really struggle with in grad school because I had so many diverse experiences and liked so many things and I wanted everything to connect. And I think that's the thing that in higher ed it's actually frowned upon to make so many diverse connections to your research and to what you do and what you're studying and what you're teaching. And so I really struggled similarly with that idea of well, I want to bring in analysis of video games into Shakespeare. And there are scholars who do that, but they're still specific. That's the hill they die on. And I'm fine with dying on hills, but I want to die on a lot of hills.
No, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Just walk up that hill, die a little bit, walk down it, walk up another hill, die a little bit more.
Yeah.
Death by 1,000 arrows, kind of. By the end of the last hill, you're like, this is the one I'm really dying on.
As a Shakespeare scholar, I have to make a little death joke, but I also don't want to do that.
That's okay.
No, and so this is a really fascinating conversation, and I think that all of us have had very kind of storied changes in our own experience of ourselves and our own confidence in ourselves. I know the three of us have been very much talking about kind of our own experiences. Do you get these stories or these responses from students you work with or colleagues in your department? How often is imposter syndrome talked about for you?
It's a thing in my or not my cohort, I guess more my department. It's a thing that we've actually kind of made an effort to talk about a lot.
Okay.
And we found when you go oh, you kind of experience the same thing I do, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails of imposter syndrome. When it's oh, we're because people are probably struggling. But to commiserate is a really powerful thing to do, I guess. And it's what's nice about the pod right now is to know oh, this is a normal thing that happens to people. It doesn't mean I'm wrong or not meant for, higher ed or anything like that. I found to be really helpful.
We do less of it in my cohort, but I'm gonna fully admit to being a hermit. So especially as like, you know, so when I came in, it was me and two of my now really good friends, and then like one other person who was remote due to, you know, issues with COVID, which is totally fine. But the only people I really talk about it with are those really close friends, and like one of them, he and I we talked about it a lot actually just the other day, where where I was like, how are you doing? Like I checked in because I was like, I've been in a mood for like weeks, and I think it's because of this. Like, how are you doing? And then we had like a pretty long conversation about like feeling like a lot of things are futile, and like we're both doing the darn thing. Like we're both dissertating, we're both in this like late stage place where, you know, we're trying to get stuff out there, and we're feeling very frustrated by the literal brick wall that just like, you know, props itself up in front of you if you haven't, you know, done certain things before, like the publishing issue. Although congrats to him, I think he's got something that's going to be in a journal, or maybe it might be a part of a chapter of a book. I can't remember. He had a couple things out in the world, so I can't quite recall. But he's, you know, it's really just that small cohort of us that talk about it. And then I think some of the younger, you know, members of the department, I feel like I'm still getting like a lot of the front from them. Like you know, I'm doing fine. Of course I'm doing fine. Why wouldn't I?
Why are you
doing
asking?
Fine? Don't ask me about that.
Don't ask me. I don't want to say anything.
Don't perceive me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't look at me. Don't think about me. The whole thing.
Your school needs thieves' cant. You need like a code where
they're just scratching on the walls in the music hall.
Oh, that's already happening.
Well, and I do think, I mean, I don't mean to speak for the music school, but like music programs seem inherently more competitive to me. So I imagine there's a little bit of that kind of posturing.
Yeah. So I've done the performance person posturing. That sucks. And it can bring out a really mean streak in a lot of people. I find that a lot of musicians quietly are really mean to each other, to themselves. And it's because we all hate ourselves secretly, quietly. And we don't think we're the best musician out there, but you have to project that. But I think that deep down, everyone is actually could be a very nice person if they could just let go of some of that like fear, but it is inherently competitive. And I think that gets brought into, even if you're in the more research side of things, you kind of panic because a lot of us have some kind of early music, you know, most people have like a bachelor's in performance or you've done a lot of performing in your bachelor's. That little mentality sneaks its little way up the totem pole, no matter where you end up. So it does tend to be it tends to be a little more toxic than it should be. And it's hard sometimes to pull people out of that. But when you can pull someone out of that, usually it's like, hello, lifelong friend. Come here.
Yeah.
We're all going to band together.
Yeah.
And speaking as a flutist, we are some of the meanest people. Oh my God, we're a bunch of divas. And I participated in it. I was not a kind person in my undergrad towards other flutists, especially. And there wasn't a lot of competition for me, but I still felt the need to lash out in that way. And that's, I think, some of that ugly part of the imposter syndrome stuff that comes out, especially in music, is like viciously defending what you have.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different, like, we could spend an hour or two talking about how crazy sometimes music school is for no great reason at all.
I mean,
but everyone's always kind of peacocking is I think the best way to put it. We're all like,
but I mean, even the idea of like viciously defending what you have, like in my field, which is English language and literature, like people do that. It's you know, you have your research niche, and if people start to encroach on that, like there are some scholars who embrace it with grace and compassion, and they really want to like build up the next generation of scholars. But usually they're at a point in their career where they're like,
established.
chill. You know,
They're like, hello, I have a job.
Yeah, but like they're stable. They've got kind of what they need to be generous
Mhm.
to the next generation. If you are trying to publish and get your ideas out there, you are viciously defending the ideas that you're like. I remember like these weird moments of anger while I was writing my dissertation whenever I would read a book that was
Mm.
making similar claims, and I had to catch myself and be like, no, this is what academics do.
We are building.
We exchange ideas.
We exchange ideas. We're building on each other. They're not stealing your ideas. It's not like they came up with it for like I had to do the mental gymnastics of this is okay. This is normal.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
you don't
You have to talk to yourself.
I
Oh,
do. I had to talk to myself and like talk myself down
Yeah.
from being very defensive of the things I was doing, even though I was still I doubted at that point whether or not I wanted to go into academia. Like I still knew that I needed to defend my ideas in that like kind of vicious way. Even though I was like, well, I don't even know if I want to be an like it was so insidious how it kind of like
Mhm.
crept into the way I was reading and the way I was interacting with other people, and yet I was still like not totally set on being a researcher in that way.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
I think one thing, so like, right, we've talked a lot about what we've went through or just the experience, right? I think, again, because I'm always trying to have this mindset of like a useful thing for our listeners
Yeah.
of like, if you've got like a tip, a trick, or just even an explanation of your process for like continuing to live with it, like what does that look like for each of you, I guess, and also for me as well. I'll also share.
I don't know. It's hard. It's because it's a daily thing. Like I am someone who has always like talked down to myself quite a lot. That's
Mhm.
I have a very mean. There's a tiny Eden in there, and she's very mean.
Oh,
Got the angel and the devil, and it's a lot more devil.
Stop being mean
The
to my
angel is
friend.
on a sabbatical for like years. She's left.
No, come back.
Well, right, exactly. So I have to like call her up and be like, "Hey, girl, what are we? we gotta stop
Help.
this. You gotta tell this other girl to shut up." But like it is a lot of that, like So I'll say this: I sent Samantha a cover letter, and even the email tone that I sent you, because like we're friendly and we're friends. Are we friends?
Yeah.
Friend meter. Okay.
Yeah,
Friend imposter syndrome.
Hearts.
So I sent her a cover letter for a position I'm applying for, and I hate that cover letter, or at least
Aw.
I did when I was drafting it. It was like pulling teeth, and I kept thinking to myself, "You're bad at writing cover letters. Why
Oh.
are you writing cover
Oh.
letters? No one wants to hire you."
Huh.
Like it's all this really like you don't belong in that particular space
Oh.
idea. And then when I send it out to this part of my defense is sending it to someone who will give me feedback and be like, there are good parts of this.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's seeking that external validation, but also sometimes it's like, well, you know what? Fine. You want to have that self-talk to yourself. At the same time, if you don't apply for any of these things, you're never going to get any of these
Yeah.
things. So
yeah.
the punishment is you're a failure and you can't accept that.
Oh.
And then I'm like, oh yeah, well duh. I have to do these things because it's part of life. Like
Yeah.
calm down. Stop talking like that to yourself. You're just doing stuff that you feel is kind of difficult right now. And it will eventually get easier so long as you do them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sorry, the practice mentality is still there.
Yeah.
Worst they do is like tell you no, and I'm already expecting them to say no. So
Right,
what's the cost
exactly.
anyways?
Exactly. So I have to like, it's always the like little reminder that's like, no, you're doing what you need to do.
Mhm.
Just stay the course. Like,
Yeah.
calm yourself. Just chill.
Keep calm.
Have-
Carry
have a-
on.
Have a cup of tea. You're gonna be fine.
Whoa,
And-
are we bringing back keep calm and
I
carry
was gonna say I saw like the crowd.
Oh, and I'm in the tea.
Tumblr.
Oh yeah. No, we're going full Brit. Keep calm, carry on, have a cup of tea. All that good stuff. But that's usually like the everyday thing. If I'm really panicking, I will like reach out to a friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it's
Good.
always
I'm
Yeah.
glad
Yeah.
to hear you've got that.
Yeah, oh yeah, no. It's always the same friend. The same one who I accosted after class for coffee. She's like my person, yeah. Like the Grey's
Wonderful.
Anatomy, that's my person. That's my
Yeah.
person. So she and I, we both do it. And she
Mhm.
reaches out when she's
Mhm.
feeling like, because she, she got a new job recently. And like,
Congrats.
Yeah, exactly. Great. But like sometimes she's like, I feel like, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, do I know what I'm doing? Because this thing happened. I'm like, you know what? You're fine.
Mhm.
Everybody's fine. Everyone calm down.
Mhm.
It's a lot of just telling people to calm down,
Mhm.
is part of my process at least. But sometimes it's also just like take a beat, take like an hour for yourself.
Take a
To-
weekend even, yeah.
And I have done that. And usually after that weekend,
I'm like, oh no.
I'm so behind. I get caught up, but like it's like, I play some kind of video game most nights.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I say, okay, brain off, and I turn off the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And, I watch silly videos on YouTube. That keeps me sane as well. And you got to find ways of like just sort of coping with the fact that it's there. I've lived with it for, I don't know, 20 some odd years, probably. I'm not that old. But as long as I've been in, college, really. So it's just sort of those like just find little things to do and say to yourself, because again, if you never say like you're gonna be okay,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a hard time. And
Yeah.
so I spend a lot of time telling myself it's gonna be fine. Just
Yeah.
do what you need to do, and it's good. Everything will be okay. All things for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. So at the end of the day, if I can't think of anything else to say about it, I'm like, all things for a reason. You will get through this.
Yeah.
That's great.
But that's mostly been the internal process. And if
Yeah.
I need something, I really do reach out to people, because other people are going through it.
Yeah.
And other people have different coping mechanisms, and then other people can say, you're being a dingus, you're fine,
Yeah.
you're awesome, don't talk to yourself like that, don't be mean to my friend Eden. And
Yeah.
then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I shouldn't be mean to my friend Eden, or your friend Eden, whoever she is.
I'm my own
Anyways.
friend.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What about you, Samantha?
I mean, I think you kind of hit on a lot of the kind of practice mentality, the idea that, you are constantly learning, you're constantly growing. For me, I think the imposter syndrome gives me a sense of humility. Like I go into a room kind of thinking, "Oh, everyone here is winging it." Like and
Mhm.
I know and I can acknowledge when people are very intelligent and have good things to say, but they don't have the whole picture, and I can bring something,
Mhm.
anything to the table, whether or not I feel like I totally belong there, or, I have intelligent things to say. I think I've gotten to the point in my life where I've acknowledged that for the most part, probably everyone in that room is also feeling some sort of hesitancy or trepidation or even just self-doubt. And so I kind of leverage that to be like, hey, we're all in this together. Like, I feel that way too. Let's see what we can do to either solve the problem together or to just make us feel like we can actually work together and not have a competitive spirit or not have this wall between us that says, "Oh, I have to protect myself," because, you know, I think everyone is vulnerable in different ways, whether they show it, and I kind of use that now to actually feel more confident when I'm in the room, because I'm like, "Oh, we're all just winging it."
Yeah.
And to that end, I actually do think that one, like any creative thing you can do to kind
Mhm.
of like let yourself feel bad at something
Mm-hmm.
is actually really, really effective for kind of combating some of this imposter syndrome, because, we were talking earlier about like not really knowing too many people who have higher ed degrees in our families, and yet they're all good at something,
Mhm.
and I think that's kind of valuable for me to remember is we all started from a kind of baseline 0. We've been leveling up for
Mhm.
the entire time. Whether you're the same level as somebody else doesn't really matter, as long as you're kind of having fun with what you are actively doing. I also highly encourage people to, like you said, reach out to others and like have vulnerable conversations about how you're feeling and how you're really doing. Like the "how are you really doing"
Mhm.
question is, I think, very powerful in these spaces. I also recommend improv, and I
Play a tabletop
so,
role-playing game with your friends.
play games, do things that force your brain to work differently. Because I think what has helped me as somebody who's like actively practicing improv and improv comedy is it gives me space to do weird things that I can then like leverage into other situations. So I am much more comfortable in conversation now because I don't feel like I have to anticipate what everybody's going to say, and I can kind of wing it with more confidence.
Yeah.
And that's actually helped. Because I used to be the type of person that would like rehearse conversations, and I would go into meetings being like, all right, these are the questions I'm going to ask, and I want this type of response. And if I don't get this type of like, if she says this, I need to say this kind of dance of expectations. So improv has kind of helped me feel a little bit less guarded because I don't feel like I have to say everything perfectly the first time. And it's helped me feel more confident about myself in a lot of situations because I just practice being goofy in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, unironically, like, play a tabletop role-playing game. Because, like, you might roll a nat 1, and then the challenge is how do you respond to that? Or it might be your character's time, like, in the light, and you might whiff it. And then, like, and I've had that happen to me. And then it's like, okay, now I have to adapt and think about how my character can overcome this. And so it's easy when you're placing that on a character that's not, that's you, but not you. But, like, we played a campaign last year, and like, I found myself like learning through the campaign and like actually thinking like, oh, like I could apply some of these concepts in my own life of, you know, like I whiffed that one, you know, moment or whatever, but here's how I can take that and spin it positively or what I can do next time. And I was like, oh, that's a positive mindset. I should do that elsewhere in my life. The other thing for me to work through it, and it's a thing I've talked on the pod about in the past, is like really leaning into like being a nerd, but like specifically like enjoy how small or niche your scholarship is. Like you might be one of 12 people who cares about a thing. That means most people probably don't care that much. And so the stakes are not the biggest thing ever. And just like finding whatever that community looks like for you, however large or small that may be, like understand that it's okay, but it's this weird mix of there are people that care about it, but there's not too many. So it's okay. And just trust in yourself. It's hard. There's a lot of talking to myself. And really the last thing is trying to spin it into like positive stress of like, okay, I'm stressed. There are things I need to do. I'm going to try to channel that when I'm in the mindset to motivate me to actually work on and make progress on those things. And that's maybe half the time for me, but like learning to recognize those moments when I can use that to motivate me has been a really big help.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, you guys are getting through it. You're learning, you're adapting, you're developing strategies that will help you in the future.
We're gonna make it.
I'm wagging a finger at Eden so that she knows that she needs to be nice to Eden.
Yes. I just, you know, it's friendly little reminders like that.
Yeah.
Be the angle, not the devil.
That could be your angle.
But also your devil.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for a very vulnerable conversation.
I feel better.
I feel, good.
I feel lighter.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
No, it's nice to share these things with people and to our listeners.
Yeah.
How many did we say we had?
4.
We have numbers.
We
have numbers.
We love all 4.
Yes.
But hey, hopefully we can maybe get some advertising on the Instagram or something. So.
Yeah, something productive so we can share this story, share these stories with more people, and again, kind of normalize that this is something that exists at KU and that we can all combat it in different ways. We can all kind of protect ourselves from the dangers of imposter syndrome.
And just like all the signs are on KU say, you do belong.
Yeah.
I noticed those like what they went up the end of last year. Or whenever the new campaign was, I was like, that's kind of,
that's me.
Weirdly, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, does that help? I wonder if that helps people, you know, I hope it does. Because you do belong here no matter, you know, where you are in your program, what successes or less than successes you've had recently. So.
And you belong at KU.
And ever the company man, if you're having questions, come talk to us at the Wingspan because we are here to talk to you about these things. You can actually talk to your podcast hosts.
Exactly.
I don't know.
You can either do
come to us for coaching
or the coaching. Honestly, this would be a great thing for coaching.
Yeah.
So if you've been like feeling like this, come check out our coaching services
Yeah.
because Nolan and I for sure are graduate coaches, but we also have amazing colleagues who also do the coaching. I would
I don't know
talk
if
to
I'm a
literally
good
anyone.
coach, but I know everyone
Exactly.
else is.
Stop
Do
that.
I belong to be a coach?
Samantha says no.
Stop that. I hired you for a reason. No. But yeah, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. We're going to end it here. We're going to have another few episodes this semester, so look forward to that. But as we close, happy writing, y'all.
Happy writing.
Happy writing.